Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 98 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm lucky to be joined by Rob Edwards today. Rob is the CEO of the NEA, the Neurodiversity and Entrepreneurship Association. The NEA provides a meeting place for all those with an interest in neurodiversity and entrepreneurship, creating a safe and nurturing environment for neurodivergent entrepreneurs to get the help and support they need to start their own business, and get ongoing support to keep them up and running and earning them an income. Based in West Yorkshire in the UK, Rob himself is a neurodivergent entrepreneur and has worked with membership groups, academics and businesses for over 20 years, holding senior roles in academic publishing before becoming self-employed in 2014. He advises about marketing, events, business development and board strategy, and has also been an associate lecturer in creativity and innovation. Great to have you on the show, Rob.
Thanks very much. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, so very excited to hear about all the work projects and the things you've been doing with NEA, but keen to start by hearing about your own journey as a neurodivergent entrepreneur. When did you realize you weren't neurotypical?
So I think probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to do more work with neurodivergent entrepreneurs. And just from having talks with them and conversations, and you know how suddenly you get that light bulb moment and just think, I love what they're describing is what I go through, these feelings of hitting a wall, overwhelm, and not being able to do anything for the rest of the day, having all of these ideas spinning around my head, but having difficulty sort of seeing them through to completion, through 100%. So I'd say it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Basically, our son, Jake, he's 12 now, and he got his autism diagnosis when he was 4. So obviously that took us into finding out as much as we possibly could about autism and neurodiversity. And then basically the family went like dominoes. So when my wife got her ADHD diagnosis, I got mine. Our eldest daughter got hers. Our youngest daughter was neurotypical, we thought, for ages and ages, and now she's being assessed for autism as well. So we finally got to her in the end. But I'd say before I got my diagnosis about 3 years ago now, those sort of warning signs.
Yeah, okay. And you talked about all the ideas spinning around your head and not being able to see projects through to completion sometimes. Can you talk more about some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so it wasn't a problem with creativity at all. I could have hundreds of ideas about things before I became self-employed as well when I was working in organizations. But I just thought that I was probably a bit lazy and a bit sort of fuzzy-headed, like I couldn't actually see the detail of a lot of the tasks that were necessary to get these ideas across the line. And that led to all sorts of feelings of not being good enough, I suppose, comparing myself with other people, particularly when I was employed, who were at a similar sort of level in the company, and they seemed to have no problem at all having these amazing ideas, but then being able to pull them all together. And so it just sort of added to this feeling of not being quite enough, I suppose. and of thinking there was something wrong with me because everybody else seemed to be able to just do these things, And it's really only been, as I say, getting my ADHD diagnosis about 3 years ago that I've started to obviously reassess everything from school all the way through employment and into running my own business now.
What sort of changes have you noticed after getting the diagnosis?
So, huge reassessment of everything, thoughts of going back to when I was in school, and lots of teachers saying that they really liked the way that I was writing and the way that I was really persuasive. But then when they delved into it, the detail just wasn't there, it wasn't actually built on anything of real substance. And the teachers saying to me, you just have to sit down and make yourself work. And I was really struggling with it. And I remember one teacher saying, I don't like marking, but I have to make myself do it. You just need to sit there. And it just seemed to be this real sort of grey spot, I suppose, in terms of how I worked at school. So I found it really tough. Since getting the diagnosis, it's made me think, okay, well, perhaps there was something else at play, Don't get me wrong, I still think I'm amazingly lazy, but I think there might have been other complications, other factors at play as well. So that's been really interesting in terms of sort of self-care and being kinder to myself. I just think I've spent so many years just beating myself up about not being good enough and not being the best manager, not being the best leader, not being the best business owner. And to suddenly think, where I am now, that's exactly where I want to be. And I still work really, really hard. But if I'm not doing all the things that I sort of have these preconceptions about that I should be doing, it doesn't matter. It's just a different way of working, a different way of doing business, I think, of running a company. I think it's taken a long time for me to get to that sort of happier place, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like you're now able to work more in alignment with your own rhythms rather than having to brute force it the typical way. Because I guess that advice from teachers, there's some element of that you need grit and you need to work hard, but it sounds like there's also just some things that were very challenging and maybe you didn't see the point of doing it the way that they were asking you to do it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's this huge piece about just getting bored so quickly, loving the new projects. And if you were set assignments at school or uni, then it was, oh yeah, brilliant. Got all these ideas whizzing around. But when you actually come to then doing the boring bit of getting it all down on paper, then that's the bit that I struggled with. But obviously you sort of make your way around it somehow, don't you? But yeah, it's a bit of a tough challenge sometimes.
Absolutely, I can relate. I'm starting a PhD now, and that's the situation. All the ideas, and how do I actually synthesize it into a piece of paper?
I'm starting one in the autumn as well, so
right.
Yeah, share your pain.
We'll have to compare notes.
Yeah.
So now with your current career, you talked about some of the things that I guess were challenges, but are probably actually strengths now in terms of being able to be exceptionally creative and helping other people who have gone down a similar path. Can you tell us about the strengths that you're leaning into now?
Yeah, so I'd say hyperfocus, I think, is fantastic. I do think I'm able to get stuff done in a couple of hours that it might take a lot of people a day or two to do. Obviously, it comes with a bit of a downside as well, because if I have been hyper-focusing a lot, if it's been a really intense week and I've had lots of projects to get over the line, then it does have that real draining impact on me. And by Friday, I'm just, not fit for anything. So learning about those sort of, what would I say, like when you're best at work, I think, when those patterns, those routines, I think is really important. Hyperfocus has just really helped me to concentrate on what I want to do with the business and the sort of things that I want to actually get achieved. So that, I think, is a really useful benefit. And I think as well, I'm just sort of trying to embrace all of these spinning plates that are whizzing around all the time. I always used to feel that it was something that I just couldn't turn the volume down on. But now I think it does help me to see gaps and to see opportunities that I'm not sure everybody can see. I think it's going on all the time. And then we'll come to fruition where I'll think, I need to get so-and-so and so-and-so together. And we can talk about something that's going to be amazing in this sort of general area. I'm not sure of the details yet because I don't do the details, but I think it's a real strength. And I think a lot of that I put down to my ADHD. And yeah, this real sort of creativity, I suppose, and having all of these ideas whizzing around, which I used to find really tiring and draining, but now I'm trying to lean into that a little bit more. And I think as well, trying to care a little less about what I imagine other people think about me. Like imposter syndrome has been a huge part of being neurodivergent and my experience. I think that I do have a tendency to have that as a really sort of heightened feeling. I compare myself, and I know everybody does to a sense, but I think it feels quite heightened. And obviously a lot of the sort of the literature as well, the research shows that can be quite heightened amongst neurodivergent people. Running your own business as well is really, it's a lonely path to tread. I think you inevitably start comparing what you're doing with other people in the same area.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a bit of a, what would I say? I've turned a bit of a corner with a lot of that, and I've thought it doesn't really matter as long as the people that I actually care about think I'm doing a good job and we're paying the bills, then that's the main thing.
Yeah, that's a struggle for me as well, because there's all these platforms. I guess LinkedIn now is the one that I would look at the most, and you see the highlights from other people and then extrapolate that everything must be going great in their business and their careers and their personal lives. And it's not necessarily true, but my brain goes down that path.
Yeah. And I think you have that really sort of heightened feeling of rejection sensitivity as well, don't you? So if I know that someone whose opinion I really value, I spoke to them about the NEA, right, really early days, and probably they had like this tiniest criticism or a pointer about something that I might want to do differently. And it set back my progress with the association by about 6 months or so. It sort of brought up a lot of those feelings again about being an imposter and how other people would be doing this better. And again, of not quite being enough. So yeah, I think that's something that I have to keep an eye on, and something that I've noticed more since I got my diagnosis.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Can you tell us now about both what you're doing right now with the NEA, but also the entrepreneurship projects that you had prior to that as well?
Yeah, so we're nearly 2 years into running the NEA as a social enterprise. And we look after entrepreneurs, so people who are neurodivergent, who perhaps have a business idea and are maybe thinking that they need a bit of structure and a bit of support through that process. So we're expanding that, which is really exciting. We're also looking at how we can accredit sort of business support programs that are already in existence, any sort of enterprise skills development, so working a bit with universities as well, seeing how they can better support all of their staff and all of their researchers, all of the external clients that they might come across in terms of research when they're going out and doing interviews, for example. So that's really exciting, and I think that's really needed. It seems to change so slowly. I think a lot of enterprise support is still based around things like your Dragon's Den pitching. It's still based around a very sort of non-neurodivergent way of thinking. Still a lot around business model canvas and things, which again doesn't always play to strengths. So there's loads to be done there. And when I come across people at universities who are as enthusiastic about that as I am, then that's really exciting. So we've got quite a lot of that on the go, and that's something that we'll be rolling out in terms of accreditation over the next 12 months, which is great. And looking at what we can do outside of the UK as well, because as you'll know, the conversation in terms of what neurodiversity looks like is very different depending on where you are in the world. Australia, I think, really exciting and leading the way, because there's a lot that's been put into policy and a lot that's been put into government structures, which is really interesting and exciting. But yeah, again, through partnerships and things like that, then there's lots that's on the go as well. We've just launched a new careers centre as well. So I'm hoping that as that develops, we'll have people advertising sort of freelance businesses, the work that they're doing, so that we can start to put a bit of more of a spotlight on neurodivergent freelancing and self-employment. And also that we'll have other organizations as well who are looking for talent that might be a little bit left field, might be a little bit more out to the box. So again, that's really exciting. That just launched a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot on the go at the moment in terms of promoting that and making sure that it's what we want it to be.
Amazing.
As I've said, the PhD. So that's, looming on the horizon at the moment, but very excited about that as well.
I'm intrigued by a lot of what you mentioned there, especially the changes in the enterprise skills programs, because I just went through 2 university accelerator programs and then a non-university accelerator program. And they did a lot around pitching and a lot around business model canvas. I'm curious about what you'd suggest instead. I know Sharon, who's our mutual connection, talks a bit about effectual entrepreneurship, I believe. Is that more of the way that you'd suggest?
Yeah, and there are loads of alternatives as well. There's lots of alternatives to pitching. I've been running businesses for 12, 13 years now, and I've never had to do a Dragon's Den pitch just because it frightens me to death and I don't think it plays to my strengths. And there are other ways of getting finance for your business. There are other ways of spreading the word that are not quite so anxiety inducing. In terms of alternatives to the business model canvas as well, like Sharon will talk a lot about that sort of different way of thinking, different ways of approaching the idea, the sort of plan for your business that's in your head. And she's just actually launched a really exciting program that pulls all of that to bits and then builds it up again for neurodivergent entrepreneurs. So that's really exciting. But I think it's having that range of options, isn't it? Business model canvas can be really useful for loads of people. It does tend to segment your thoughts, I suppose, about your business idea. But again, it's fairly text heavy. It's still about that sort of disparate way of thinking, I suppose, rather than it all sort of coming together somehow. In terms of business pitching, there are alternatives. There's asynchronous presentation where you're doing it in another room. It takes away a lot of that anxiety and gives neurodivergent individuals in particularly, but also everybody, a bit more of a level playing field. We've published a toolkit about how best to teach enterprise, if you're a researcher, how best to work with neurodivergent stakeholders as well. And it's full of loads of resources and loads of best practice in there as well. So it needs mixing up a little bit. What we still do just needs looking at and maybe expanding a little bit.
I just pitched at a pitch night last night, and you're making me think maybe it would have been easier if I'd been in another room rather than doing it in front of 200 people, which was definitely anxiety inducing.
Goodness, well done. I mean, blimey, that's a crowd, isn't it?
Yeah. And I guess the other thing with pitching is maybe the double empathy problem comes in as well. That when you're pitching to a neurotypical audience, I find it hard to figure out what do people actually want to know. And I, in some ways, find the way that is suggested quite boring because I like to understand the high level and the detail, and it's hard to be able to fit that into a pitch.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you've got a head that's full of spinning ideas, then actually prioritizing that and getting that message across is really hard. So, like I said, loads of sort of conversations I've had about my business have been, LinkedIn to start with, but yeah, one-to-one conversations. And for me, that is much more productive and it just fits the way that I work much better. There's something to be said as well for that sort of access to finance piece as well. If you are looking for external funding for your business, do we still have to go through that pitching process? Are there kind of ways to do it where you can still get the same sort of information flow, but something that's a little bit more nurturing, I suppose, and a little bit more stress-free?
Yeah. It makes me think about the audition process for musicians and how in the past it was you'd do it in front of the conductor and the producer, and that led to a lot of bias around them basically selecting men. And then having people behind a screen led to more diverse hiring in the music space. I wonder if something similar could happen in the funding space as well. Right now, maybe there's over-indexing on guess, performative pitching and the ability to build rapport through great eye contact and some of the things that neurodivergent people struggle more with. Maybe we miss out.
I just think there's a different way of doing business that is sort of starting to emerge, but not quite fast enough for me. We still have business advice at that sort of startup stage about a strong handshake when you meet people, and as you say, eye contact, be as charismatic as you possibly can. Fantastic. If that's something that comes easily to you, then yes. But I don't think that it's something that we shouldn't look at other ways of doing it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. What do you think about in terms of, I guess, doing sales? We had someone come on from the UK in one of our earlier episodes who was talking about how hard he found it to do cold calls and that approach of downselling, and how he didn't feel that that's very neurodivergent friendly, and he much prefers more of an inbound approach. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I've had jobs in the past, obviously, where I've had to do cold calling and like lists of people to phone, and just wanted to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. And again, I think it's about this rapport piece, isn't it? And I don't think it necessarily has to be that you're going through this really painful process in a lot of places of sort of banging your head against a brick wall without much success. I just think that, there's other ways of networking. There's other ways of meeting other business owners, other funders, other potential clients and customers. If you're more comfortable typing stuff, if you're more comfortable on one-to-one basis, then, there's a need there, isn't there? It's not just a neurodivergent thing, I don't think. I think it's just expanding those options that are available, really.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably one of those universal design principles that a lot of people are disadvantaged by the current modus operandi.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so ingrained as well, isn't it? But when you look at commerce going way back, people were still having those one-to-one conversations because we didn't have all of the tech. I think there's a call to maybe bring some of that back, some of the good things from that.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're not running NEA, what do you get up to in your off time?
So, as I said, we've got Jake, who's nearly 13, and he's autistic, and he's been out of school for the last 2 years. So he found it really challenging, just the actual space of being in the building and that sort of thing. So we have him at home full time. And thankfully, we both, my wife and I, work from home. Otherwise, we'd have been sacked by now or really struggled. So a lot of the time is making sure he's got enough. He has tutors who come in. So the rest of the time, just to make sure that he's not just sitting there staring into space, And outside of the family as well, I do lots of amateur dramatics and lots of shows, musicals and things. And again, I just think that's a really nice combination of the creative side of things, but also that sort of hyper focus as well, because I've got lines to learn, I've got songs to learn, and it's for those sort of 3-4 hours of that rehearsal, that's all I've got to do, and everything else can just stop spinning around. So yeah, it's a fantastic process. I really love doing that.
Wow, that's a very massive set of different talents there. Singing and acting.
No, it's cool. I'm getting too old to do it now, but yeah, it was a lot of fun back in the day.
Have you ever used that in your business as well to write advertising jingles for your businesses?
I haven't, but one thing I'm really interested in is I do a lot of work with case studies, that are used in universities and business schools. And that sort of dramaturgical approach, so where you have people who are actually acting out a verbatim interview or a conversation between two business owners, say. That's really exciting. That's a really interesting way that's sort of still sharing your message, but in a much more immediate and engaging way as well. With all of the rest of the stuff that I've got going as well, I haven't really looked into that properly, but that could be a really nice mashup of the research side of things and the drama as well.
What's your PhD in, by the way?
Neurodivergent entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So, looking at the day-to-day balance of it between the sort of asset side of things and more the liabilities. Doing lots of interviews like this to find out what really makes neurodivergent business owners and entrepreneurs tick.
Very, very congruent. It seems like you've got all the plates, but a lot of them are connected in some way.
I think it all sort of hangs together somehow, but I think some of the connections might be a little bit dubious sometimes. But yeah, I like it's all sort of coming together somehow.
So now I'm keen to hear about what you do now in order to, I guess, optimize getting things done despite all the different ideas and without feeling like you're calling yourself lazy or anything like that. It sounds like you've achieved a lot. So what are your best productivity tips?
So when I get to the stage of feeling really stressed or anxious and I can't quite work out why, it's normally because something isn't organized, that I don't have a time slot for something, or I feel that I've just got all of these plates spinning and haven't really sort of tied them down to specific actions. So that sort of productivity is quite a delicate balance, isn't it? Between sort of controlling the chaos and also giving it some structure as well, so that it's not too boring. But I've got things like this tablet, so this Remarkable tablet, which I find really great and has been a bit of a life changer. It's basically the fact it's got no sort of pop-ups and the fact that it's got no color, and I can't suddenly go and surf socials or look at the random history of Iceland or something while I just focus on my work. And that's been fantastic. And I can just get everything out of my head and put it down into that, and then sort of draw boxes around it and arrows everywhere. And that really has helped. I've got sort of trial subscriptions to just about every online productivity tool ever. But I've just got bored with them or have never persevered. So I'd say that has been really useful. I use Motion as well. So that's the one sort of productivity tool that I've actually got used to and I work not too bad with. I'd say it organizes your to-do list and puts it into a calendar for you. And that takes a bit of getting your head around because you sort of feel like you're letting go of some of that control. But I find that's been quite a useful tool for me as well. And getting out of that 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 routine has taken ages. I've been self-employed now for, as I say, about 12 years or so, but it's taken years and years to get out of that sort of guilty feeling if I'm not working at the crack of dawn right through to the end of the day. And I've realized now I'm more productive from 10 till 6 than I am from those first 2 hours of the day. I don't really do early mornings much. So that's been huge in terms of the productivity and understanding what works for me best. But as I say, it's been really hard to re-educate myself out of that mindset that I had from being employed.
The factory knowledge worker factory mindset.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a real struggle to just put that aside and know that I get much more done by actually listening to myself and knowing when those high energy times peak and then when they start to tail off as well. It's been really good letting go of some of that. And then little bits of chat GTP and sort of AI, but I don't know, we work with so many creative people. I don't tend to use it for something that I think someone could be employed to do. So not for design or anything like that. But if I'm putting together reports or if I'm putting together written pieces, then to be able to just splurge it all out, hurl that into something and it puts it into nice sections for me or rewrites bits that don't sound quite right, then that's been really useful as well. And that's made me much more productive as well, but fully appreciating that it doesn't come without its downside as well.
Yeah. The Remarkable tablet is something I've heard a few people talk about. Do you use it mainly for when you've got a PDF that you need to read in quite a lot of depth, and that's where you would use it to circle things and maybe write on it as well?
Yeah, so that's really useful, especially as I've been doing like a PhD proposal and pulling all that together. Really useful to just be able to splurge all that down and then write all over it. But I've got things like a daily planner on there as well. So really basic, what I'm doing each hour, what I'm rolling over to the next day. And it's got this sort of scribble pad, like quick notes thing as well, which is really useful. And again, it just gets the stuff out of my head and I can just stick it down there. You can convert it into text as well and email it to yourself, which is quite useful sometimes. And again, sort of tag things up, because before I had Gantt charts in Excel. I had bits of paper everywhere, post-it notes all over the wall. You see? Exactly.
Now it's all in one device.
Exactly, yeah, and now it's in here. So until the day that the tech explodes and I lose everything, but it is backed up. But yeah, I've found it's really useful to be able to categorize things and to find things again as well. It's just been really valuable. So yeah, it was worth the money, definitely.
Mm. Do you then have a folder structure in terms of how you organize the notes?
Yeah, so I tend to do it around, I suppose I've got a bit of a sort of sales funnel in it as well. So separate for prospects and for in discussion things that are coming through to agreement stage. And just, it's very easy to move things from folder to folder, which is great. And the tags are really useful because, like I say, in the past, I've known that I've written something down and I know it's somewhere, but being able to then find that, I sound so disorganized, but it just makes things much easier, and I'm able to find everything again, and it just does a nice list of every time that I've tagged something with this particular subject or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tactile nature of it, I think, would be one of the main pros for me, because there's definitely something different about typing versus handwriting. It seems like it solves the problem of losing bits of paper, which is how I deal with it right now. And I feel bad about if I want to read a bunch of PDFs, I don't really want to print them out, but I also don't want to do it on my computer. So it's a nice medium. I might have to consider getting one.
Yeah, and like you all know, with PhD, there's just so much content, journal articles all over the place and case studies and reports. So being able to download some of those and to be able to categorize them and write all over them as well.
Do you use Zotero or something like that for reference management?
Not yet, so I haven't started the PhD yet, but as soon as I get access to all of these amazing things through the university, I should be doing that as well. Again, at the moment, they're just sort of saved in favorites folders and things on my browser, which isn't ideal, really.
Oh, good starting point. I'm the same. I've got a bunch of PDFs on my phone and my Kindle that I need to collate at some point.
Yeah, I've got so many browser windows open on my phone. I'm just like, oh my goodness, it was that research article I was going to read months ago. What's your PhD in?
It's in somewhat similar. It's about neurodivergent productivity, specifically looking at the app that I'm building, Focus Bear, and measuring the effectiveness of it. Looking at, actually, one of the studies I'm going to do is, do people with ADHD have more tabs open, and do they switch more frequently between tabs in their browser while they're working?
Amazing. Well, if you need a case study, let me know. I've got so it's ridiculous.
Cool. The other thing I wondered about is with Motion, I've heard good things about that as well. You use Motion, but then you also do the daily planner on the tablet. Do you start with Motion and then go to the planner, or vice versa, or how does that work?
Yeah, I haven't quite worked out a way of using them together properly, I don't think, but I tend to stick everything on the daily planner on Remarkable as soon as I start, because again, it gets out of my head. And sometimes I can find Motion a bit overwhelming. So if you haven't completed stuff by the deadline you set for yourself, then obviously it starts to back up a little bit and needs rescheduling or sorting out. So to be faced with that at the beginning of the day is a little bit like, and I must admit, there's been quite a few times in the past where I've stacked up all of these to-dos that I haven't quite got around to, and have just left it because it's just been too overwhelming. So to put the sort of headline stuff, I suppose, what I really need to finish that day into the daily planner, and then look at Motion and see if they actually marry up at all. And most of the time they do, but yeah, just quite useful having both.
Yeah, I do something similar. The digital and I guess the headline items, as you put it. The other question I always ask people, is there any productivity advice that is very typical that doesn't work for you? A bit like you described, pitching doesn't work for neurodivergent people necessarily. Is there an equivalent of pitching or the business model canvas for productivity that you haven't found works well?
So I've really tried to do like sort of time blocking, like Pomodoro in the past, because I really want it to work for me, because I think the essence of it, having that hyper-focus time and then a bit of downtime, is a really healthy way, I think, a really good rhythm to be able to work to. I just find it so hard to like turn the hyperfocus on when I'm supposed to be doing it for 25 minutes or whatever it is. So it's never really been something that has worked for me. But it's been suggested quite a few times. There's obviously alarm clocks you can get and timers and all of this sort of stuff. But yeah, I've invested in a few of those in the past and it's just counted down throughout the day and I've just ignored it. So that's the only thing I can really think of that's persevered with. But I think I'm probably at a stage now where I'm going to give it up.
Have you found instead that it's more about optimizing your energy rhythms in order to get into hyperfocus?
Definitely. And I think like motion is really good for that as well, because if you find that you're actually in the zone, in the flow, and you can get a lot of stuff done, then that will automatically reschedule a lot of your tasks and things. So again, it works much better with that sort of the ups and downs through the day. And like I say, I've tried so many productivity and project management programs over the years, but Motion's the one that I find most useful at the moment.
Great. Right, we'll take a quick break to digest all of that information.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
Okay, we're back from our break, and we were talking before about 9 to 5 versus 10 to 6 and how certain times in the morning work better for you. Can you tell us about what your mornings normally look like?
Yeah, so when I was employed, I'd start at least sort of 8:30, I suppose, and be straight into it. And then it was back-to-back meetings. And looking back in terms of productivity, I mean, it was fitting everything into that last 2 hours at the end of the day after all the meetings, I think that it was quite ingrained in me. I think that I thought that's what you had to do. But over the years, and since I got my diagnosis as well, and I've started sort of pulling to bits how I work and putting it all back together again, I start at 9:30, 10. That makes me much more productive and I can get as much done than I could starting that early and trying to squeeze everything in. And obviously we've got Jake at home as well, so we've got those caring responsibilities first thing. So it fits in really well. I've got time to be able to do a bit of exercise with him in the morning and get breakfast sorted with my wife. We have a coffee, talk about the day that's coming up, and just assess what the sort of priorities are going to be work-wise for the day. And that's just been really valuable. And I finally sort of got rid of that guilty feeling that I should have been up eating a savory muffin and going for a jog at 5 in the morning and some motivational thoughts. And yeah, realizing that I'm achieving what I want to do. I'm as productive now as I ever was, if not more. And to actually realize that is quite a big thing. And I find that I can work later as well. So that's a bit of an issue with me, remembering that things have to stop for dinner and for family. But I will just plow on. I find that I pick up momentum as the afternoon goes on. And that last hour or so before I finish work, I find that I'm flying through my to-do list. So again, it doesn't come without its underlying anxiety, but in terms of productivity, it's working really well for me. And I can try and fit in things like running as well, which I used to do much more of. Trying to get a bit more balance is really important to me now.
Yeah, it sounds like a sustainable approach to work. My guest last week starts his day at 4 a.m. and I think I'll meet you in the middle somewhere. I like to start a little bit earlier, but not quite that early.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't be able to sustain that, I don't think. Yeah, I think there's been times where I just haven't had headspace or haven't had the capacity to fit in things like exercise and relaxation time. So now I'm getting a better balance. It's sort of getting to that place where it's working a bit better for me. And lots of it comes with experience as well. I'm 50 now, so I've been around forever, and I've got to a stage now where things like, preconceptions about what I should be doing or what other people think I should be doing, less important now. Seem to have less of a bearing on the way that I live my life, which is nice.
Yeah, I like what you were saying in the middle there as well around questioning the defaults, back-to-back meetings. something that plagues me as well, and the same kind of situation then, that I cram everything in towards the end of the day and I find it very hard to stop. So
Yeah, exactly. I was still really productive, but from that sort of 4 till 6 p.m. slot, you were still trying to process all of the meetings that you'd been to through the day, trying to remember what you were doing in the morning. I just don't think, particularly if you've got any sort of processing issues at play as well, it's really hard then to keep that focus and to actually get the stuff done. That contributes to all of those feelings of not being quite good enough and feeling like everyone else had got it sorted and you hadn't,
Yeah, but I can't imagine there's actually that many people that can cope well with the back meetings.
I know, exactly. I think
Unless you're just in meetings and that's your job and you're just telling other people what to do. But if you actually have to do some work afterwards, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly. I guess so. I've never been in that position, but yeah, it's been quite tough.
So on the other end of the spectrum, what do you do to wind down after you finish work? And then how's your sleep?
I'd say sleep isn't great. Some of it's because I'm not very good at relaxing properly and just getting to sleep. So I'm a bit of a scroller on the phone and really need to put the phone in a separate room and just forget about it, but really struggle with that. I find in a way that it just calms my brain down because I can doom scroll a little bit, and that's again what I'm hyper focusing on, what I just paying attention to. And then I do find that I've lulled myself into this relaxation state. But once I get off to sleep, it's not too bad. I find that I'm waking up really tired, but I'm a middle-aged man, that could just be part of the territory anyway. But yeah, that's probably the next thing I need to look at, and getting a few more early nights and getting a bit more recuperation time. I have quite relaxing evenings, so Jake really struggles going outside really, and especially where there's crowds and things, so we tend to be at home watching box sets or whatever's on the channel. Again, that's quite a relaxing thing to do as well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice to bond with the family.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if people want to find out more about NEA or your other work, where's the best way for them to find both NEA and you online?
So NEA, probably through the website. So that's nea.global. And I'm on LinkedIn, so we're happy to hear from anybody through that as well. That's probably the easiest way to find me. If you look for Rob Edwards NEA or Rob T. Edwards, then I think it'll find me.
That's how I found you.
Yes.
And do you have any final words or asks for the audience?
So our sort of tagline for the NEA, after much deliberation, is diverse minds, limitless possibilities. And I do think that sort of together we're stronger as well. The more conversations I have with people like yourself who are in this space and really advocating for neurodivergent minds and wanting to sort of disrupt what we've just got used to, that sort of status quo, then it's an exciting time to be having these conversations and to be moving things forward. As I said, I really struggled, particularly in the past, with things like imposter syndrome. And one of our business owners in a meeting, a sort of get together this week, he talked about how a rising tide lifts all boats, which is sort of economics thinking. But I thought it relates so well to where we are in terms of neurodiversity now as well. It does feel like a rising tide. And I just feel like all of these people who in the past I would have thought were competitors and, were doing the things that I should be doing if I had limitless time. It's exciting. And there's so much that we can all go at, that it's a fantastic community to be part of at the moment. And yeah, keep on pushing on.
Wrap the show with that. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.